Hello, everyone. This is Brad Boyson, and this is HCM Impact, also known as Raise the Tide, a weekly series of videos and podcasts where we discuss material changes to the world of work with a specific emphasis on human capital reporting. What makes this series unique is that we are bringing together world experts, truly global specialists in the field who've been instrumental in developing or working on bringing human capital standards to fruition. My guest today is Richard Frost, and I believe, Richard, you're joining us from the UK?
I am, yeah. Portsmouth, which is just south of London.
Wonderful. Good. Well, maybe the best place to start is if you could just give a brief introduction about your background and perhaps even step into how you became involved with the ISO 30414 standard.
Yeah, sure. So my career has mainly been in engineering and manufacturing. I would describe myself, I suppose, as an ops guy. So I've been around, I started my career in manufacturing as a leadership position on the manufacturing line. And then I kind of moved into training, then eventually HR and everything to do with HR. So talent management, recruitment. My corporate career, which was probably around 25 years, was mainly, again, in engineering manufacturing, like I say, Johnson Controls, which was a building services organization. Well, that's the part I worked in. There's also automotive at that time and power. And I had a number of sort of senior roles within talent management, recruitment and TM for Johnson Controls. And then about 4 years ago, I got out of corporate life and moved to set up my own business and just have a small little consultancy firm focusing on talent management, for UK and US organizations. So,
and how about these standards? What was the impetus to get involved in this project?
Well, I think, I spent a lot of my career in recruitment, and to be honest, having standards and measurement that's been around a long time. Time to hire, for example, is something that every recruiter would be familiar with. So I've kind of, wouldn't say built my career, but always used data as a really useful tool when doing my day job, and being successful at it. So I like it. And I think using data and metrics in your decision-making within any HR is really important. So I had a natural sort of interest in it. Then I think we've been crying out for a standard within HR for years. So, where is one? And, being in manufacturing, I know ISO, that's across manufacturing in a variety of ways. So I started really on my own back, investigating it, found that ISO 3414 existed, because I don't think many people even now know that it does. Mm-hmm. And I actually spoke to Heiko, because I thought he did some really interesting stuff in this space and was kind of leading the thought on it as a practical tool for HR people. So I contacted Heiko and then he invited me to join the group. So that's how I got involved.
I'm seeing a common theme amongst the people that we're talking to. I don't see a lot of people who start in HR and then discover standards and move in to contribute to the project. I see a lot of people who are coming from other fields who understand the benefit of standards and then working in or related to HR are seeing how it would be beneficial to the HR profession. Do you think that's fair to say in your experience?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's a shame, really.
It is a shame. Yeah.
It's actually really beneficial to the HR community. But of course, the HR community, you've got loads of other things going on. The last year or so has been crazy for everyone. But yes, you're quite right. I see the same trend. It's kind of come from academia to a certain extent, but also independent consultants and people who have an interest in it, which is great, of course. There's nothing wrong with that. It's really getting it into the HR community. And I think, when Heiko invited me along to the group, that's probably part of it. I can't add a lot to the higher level and the academia level. That's not me. I'm an ops person, as I said at the beginning. So I think it's really encouraging HR people to get involved and get a so what for them. Why would they spend their time doing this?
Well, that transitions really well into my next question. And that is, I've been involved in this project for over 10 years off and on. And one of the most common sort of pushbacks I've heard is that people say, well, we didn't ask for this. We're stakeholders and we're not asking for this. I guess you could pivot that question around and say, you know, what is in it for stakeholders? Maybe sometimes, you know, Steve Jobs is very famous for saying, you know, how do people know what they want before I show them what we can do? Right. And sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So in a roundabout way, my question to you is, what's in it for the stakeholders of HR that is this project, these standards?
Well, I think it's a good question because there has to be a value to it. So, and I think there's a variety of values to it. The most important one, I think, is creating good data or great data. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I've been around HR long enough to know that we are generating data, but it's something that we're not great at as a function. You go to finance and they are much more thorough, I suppose. And when you're dealing with human capital or people, it's a lot more difficult. So I think, you know, what's in it for them? I think if you get great data, you get great decision making. And I think on an individual level, you get more influence. You know, managing people in just about the data. Oh God, we don't want to get to that point. But what it does do is give you intelligence about your decision making. So I think that's the biggest thing for HR people. And like, you know, simple example, which anyone listening to this will relate to if they're in HR is, you know, you do time to hire, for example. You need the data before you can make a decent decision and make some tactical changes. Otherwise, you're relying on who shouts the loudest. And that's often the CEO. And who knows if he or she is the right person to give that advice. So I think in summary, it's a bit of a long answer, sorry, but I think it's great data, great decision making. It improves your reputation in the organization.
Yeah, just to build on what you're saying is I've in my own career found that often in an HR or people related decision process that it's been very obvious to me what the organization should do or what decisions should be taken. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily obvious to the CEO, the leadership team, or other peers or managers. And you have to be able to speak on their terms. And, you know, I think that's one thing I've learned over my career, maybe not soon enough, was just that if I can say this isn't about me and my sort of personal gravitas in the organization, rather it's about the data, it's objective, it's not personal, it's not subjective, it's in the best interest of the organization, and all of these sort of factors that take the the personal like or dislike of the individual, the messenger, out of it, that's to our advantage. And I don't think a lot of HR people actually realize that. They bought into this idea that it's their own personal charisma that gets things done. And I just wanted to sort of get your thoughts on that comment.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very healthy respect for the profession. I think there's lots, you know, the HR teams I've worked in globally have all been very competent business people and are passionate about what they do. But I do kind of agree with the basis of your point is that there's a bias to it. You know, the fact retention is a great example. You know, why are people leaving our organization? There's a bias, conscious or unconscious, on your own personal experiences why people are leaving. You know, and you put that on, and that then becomes the truth. And of course, it isn't. And that's a really good example where data plays a part, because then it takes it away from that bias and gives you a much more rounded discussion. And that's what it is. So yes, I kind of agree with you. And I think there's an element of influencing and gravitas and charisma in any senior role.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Backed up by data. And it's like the analogy for me is you wouldn't expect a finance person to turn up in the C-suite without knowing the numbers. And I think it's the same with HR. That's the point we have to get to. And
that's a really good example, you know.
And that's what I like about the ISO. It does it, doesn't it, Brad? You know, it gives you that framework to come with your numbers.
Well, and Carl mentioned this in his session with us last week, is this ability to come up with a consensus internationally with so many different stakeholders and cultures and values, and people who've never experienced that. Maybe you could work in one country and you have offices in sort of one city and another city, and it's challenging enough to get those two entities to sort of speak the same language. So one of the profound benefits of this project and these standards is that you create a baseline to do better from. It's not necessarily about, this is where you stop at. This is the end game. No. This is the foundation from which you can move beyond. And I don't think a lot of HR people have sort of appreciated that fact of this project. But here's another follow-up question to you, and sort of not to put you on the spot, but that the pure mention of standards in HR, people who work in HR are often put off by that terminology, because it is so abstract or it takes away from the uniqueness. And I think that's part of the challenge of language too, is, we're not saying that all people are the same, but what are your thoughts sort of on this idea of sort of the message that, standards are beneficial to people operations? How would you counter the people who would say, no, that's like the lowest common denominator. That's making everyone one size fits all. How do you address that comment by those people?
Yeah, I think what we're not saying is you just have data, are we? What we're saying is you have emotions and thought processes around empathy for other people, for example, is a common one, and the data merely supports that. So you can have both. It's not one or the other. So I think driving forward with data does not mean that you have an HR function that just takes all the emotion out of it. That's not what we're saying. All we're saying is it helps you make better decisions around things affecting your people. Sorry.
Well, so, I love some of the coursework that I've seen and I've also been working on, because some of the people I respect who create content, academics, trainers, gurus, one of the things that's interwoven with, and I'll generalize with people analytics or workforce analytics, is this idea of storytelling or a narrative. It's connecting on the human level becomes an essential part of bringing life to the data. So you said earlier, it's not one or the other. It's a combination of both, and I could not agree more. I think one of the benefits in sort of educating people who may not be aware of this project too are success stories. And let's be honest, this is new. So there aren't a lot of examples where you can point to and say, here's a standard, here's where it's been used, and 3 years after the fact, here's the data to support the benefit. But can you give us an example in your work experience where the act of standardizing or using data has been extremely beneficial to you, the organization, and those stakeholders involved?
Yeah, I think when I look back on my career, I think recruitment is a common one. I think data's been used in talent acquisition for a long time. So I think things like, I mentioned it earlier, time to hire is a really good example. Source of hire would be another one. Retention of new hires, those sorts of things. I think all of us have used, well, not all of us, but a lot of us have used data to help in that decision making. And so let's take onboarding. So you can have a great onboarding process, and train your managers to care more and be more empathetic when a new person comes into the organization. So that's the human aspect. But the data helps you to see what is your current status. I mean, is it an issue? And then as you move forward and you put these other more people-related interventions in, like the training, for example, or a better process, et cetera, what the data does is help you to see if you've been a success or not. So I think there's some really tactical things that we'll all be familiar with. Then if you enlarge it out, which the ISO is doing with its 58 different metrics, then it helps you get a handle not just on pockets, like you're only measuring retention, that it enlarges it and it gives you a bigger playing field to look at your whole business. And I think that's the advantage of it. Think of it tactically and how it helps, and then enlarge it and think, well, if you've got all those measurements, what's it going to tell you? It's going to tell you trends of your business. It allows you to benchmark against other organizations. And really, if you had all of those 58 metrics, imagine the intelligence of debate that would bring to an organization. And I think when I look at the 58, I've been in organizations probably has had 20 or 30 of those. Yeah. So it's not like the industry or HR or our profession is not doing some of this. a lot of people would look at that and say, well, so what? Yeah, I do that. But I doubt if they do all of them. And as we progress this, what's going to be really interesting when everyone does it. So then that's when it becomes more and more powerful, because you can benchmark. So if you're making a decision whether I go to company A or B, well, I have a look at the data. If everyone goes after the first 3 months, then why would you bother joining them? You know, it actually becomes really real and really useful for us all.
Well, one of the examples I've used, and it doesn't necessarily translate to all audiences, is we're kind of at that point right now. Imagine you're working in accounting, because it probably wasn't called finance at the time. It might have been called bookkeeping, right before the introduction of IFRS or GAAP accounting principles, right? Right before that point in time, you know, and the concern that, whoa, this is really confidential. This is something, trade secrets. This is something we shouldn't be sharing. So I wanted to get your insight on that idea of, you know, what's the net stakeholder benefit to having sort of more transparency with standardized measures and metrics?
Well, I suppose those people who are performing well within their business, and when you do the metrics and the metrics are positive, then you want to shout about it, don't you? There's something to promote your organization. If you think of it, tactically, EVP, employee value proposition, will increase because you've got better metrics and you can promote those. I think the challenge will come when companies are struggling and their metrics aren't so great. But then that becomes, again, really useful because it helps you improve. Where would our industry be now, really, within, say, manufacturing without metrics? I mean, it's been the basis of it, hasn't it, Brad, for years?
Yep. Oh, sure.
And it pushes us to be better. What gets measured gets done, and all the rest of it. So I think that's quite a powerful thing to consider for people.
Well, it's our collective human history of advancement too, isn't it? You know, when you look at the Industrial Revolution and the standardization of tangible things, and now we're getting into a point of standardization of intangible. Someone asked me the other day, how did I become aware of ISO? I said it actually goes back to the days when I was, learning about computers, and I was trying to understand who made all these decisions about which protocols to use for the technology to talk to each other. Like, is it commercialized? Is it the big IBMs of the world who just impose it? And then I came to discover that there are these subject matter expert groups that get together. It's voluntary, it's global, it's consensus based. And then I actually started to look at some of these in the technical side and go, wow. And I thought to myself, these people are so influential, and people don't even know that this really exists, in that way. And one part of me was like, I'm glad this isn't being driven, so to speak, from a purely commercial point of view, that it is the collective wisdom of SMEs who are trying to make a foundation to build upon. But that, to your point, and what I just described is HR people. Where have they ever come, unless they've perhaps worked in industries where standards, ISO, manufacturing, technology is such a prevalent, important part of things. So do you see any downside to this direction that things are going? And I guess sort of back-ended to that is why do you think it seems like the catalyst to go to another level has been the investor community, however you frame it, the pension funds, the venture capitalists, this type of thing have been really pushing for more transparency on human capital. So what's your sort of snapshot of the moment as to the dynamic of what's happening?
Yeah, and I can see why the investors and the pension funds are pushing it. The thing you were talking about, the drive to intangible assets is real, isn't it? That's a real part of company value. So if you're investing in it, I don't blame them pushing the measurement of human capital and measurement of people, because it's a big part of any business nowadays. So I can see why it's coming from there. I think from the HR community, when I look, say, a UK-based HR person like me, I'm a member of the CIPD, Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. And, they have been pushing evidence-based HR for some time now.
Indeed.
So I think we're aware of it. But you're right, that the push has come from the top.
Yeah.
And when I look at some of the things that are happening around, you know, the investor community, or, you know, when you look at some of the great work happening in Deutsche Bank, you know, like the recent stuff with Heiko, which I'm sure you'll talk about when you speak to Heiko. I think that's fantastic. And that's at that level, and it's pushing this awareness down. I think what we also need to do is push that awareness up, you know, through operational HR, because they're going to be the ones doing it, really, when it comes down to it. And I think part of the battle is not just the measurement, it's making sure that what you measure is accurate.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's going to rely on your systems, your process, and then it gets very transactional very quickly. So I think what people would need to do is invest in their systems and their process to make sure what they're reporting is accurate. I think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of HR people.
Well, and to me, it comes to a debate that's been going on for quite a while in HR. Is we've kind of tried to move away from the transactional work and self-define what is strategic. And I'm of the camp, the belief that, you know, that the foundations of HR are often what cause a lot of the issues in the organization, that you have to walk before you run. Yet there's something intellectually enticing about getting into these very abstract, theoretical, you know, potentials. We talk about artificial intelligence and the impact on work and the future of work. And as a practitioner, I cringe a bit, because I know if we did some of the little things better, that the cascading effect of net benefit to the organization would be profound. And you know, I'm still waiting for, you know, the world of driverless cars, because we're in 2021. And this discussion to me started in 15, 16, that by the end of, you know, 2021, that there would be no drivers, and one of the biggest levels of unemployment would be truck drivers and all of this. So what I like about this project, amongst many things, is the pragmatic aspects of it, to have a real tangible benefit in the immediate, not necessarily in the future. You can't ignore the future, but so if I was to ask you sort of where you see this going, what is, you know, a year or two from now, your vision of the net benefit to the stakeholder community, for example, what do you foresee?
I think probably when we're looking in terms of the ISO and all the other various measurements, it's coming, isn't it? That's what it feels like. You know, what if I was an HR person in a corporate job now, I'd be getting myself aware of it. What does it mean? What are all the different aspects of this? You know, I haven't got a crystal ball, Brad, but I don't know when it will become a recognized standard. I mean, I'll start again. It is a recognized standard, but I think we need to promote it better. People need to see the value of it, and then they start doing it. And there's an element of, you know, when I look at the other standards across my career, we kind of did it when we had to do it. You know, when it became commonplace in the market, if you didn't do it, then you kind of stood out, and we're not there yet. When will we be there? I don't know, but I would like to think within 5 years that a standardization is something that everyone accepts and regularly does. But I do think it will require some education of our HR colleagues. You know, what is it? So what? Why do I need to do it? What does it involve? I think there's going to be an awful lot of transactional work to get ready for some organizations in terms of their systems and their processes and how they report data. Because it's one thing reporting data, you kind of want to make sure that what you're reporting is right. And that sounds simple, but we all know if you've done an ops job, that is not simple, because of people's discipline and entering data and just investment in systems and all the rest of it. So a very garbled answer to a really good question, but I think there's an element, I think, let's wait and see. But one thing we have to do is get a clear so what, so it helps and engages our HR professionals as we move through. I think that's really important for me.
And it may be building upon what you said, and there may be some repetition, but if someone was to just become aware of this project now, and a lot of what they heard is, wow, you know, it's kind of like a eureka or aha moment to them, how would you recommend that they either get involved or find out more, or simply improve their awareness of this project and the momentum that it has?
Well, I mean, I think go onto the website is a really good idea. It lists all the world experts there. What I did was, my process was, I understood what the standard was, the ISO 3414. You can download that. There's plenty of articles on our website, or just Google it. You'll find out what the measurements are. I think that's a good first start. So you're kind of educated on what it means. Excuse me. And then do what I did. I mean, I rang up Heiko and asked him, practically, what does this mean? And as an operational guy, what value can I see in it? Why would I do it? And that's how I got involved. So I was quite excited I knew that our industry, the HR industry, needed some sound metrics. So I was kind of converted. I was then just searching around, well, what is the best one to use? And I plumped on the ISO because I think it's great. There's loads, it's global, and it's from a recognized organization. So I think get involved, get educated about it, see what the standard is, ask someone who knows what they're talking about, and see if it's relevant to you and your business. That's what I would stress at the beginning.
Well, I think one of the really exciting things I've seen just literally in the past few months is these stakeholder communities that are sort of quickly coming together related to this. And it's one of those things where you just sort of start to see how many people are on the same page, how many people have been waiting for this for a while, yet they've really been operating in silos or islands of independence in different areas. And that's really got me excited too, is because I see this crossover where and that can only stand to benefit, people who call themselves HR, human capital, or people operations, however it's framed. That interdisciplinarian part of it is I think something people have looked for from people in HR roles for a long time. So we're kind of in our final minutes here, Richard. Is there anything that we've sort of haven't touched upon that you would like to share with people who might be watching this?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. It's been a good conversation. No, that's it, I think.
Okay. Well, with that, then I think we'll wrap it up. I want to thank our guest Richard Frost again. And Richard, you mentioned the website. Do you have a website that you would recommend people to find out more information?
Well, our HCM Impact website is a good first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
First spot on that. I think that's go there, and that helps you educate yourself about the ISO. That's what I would do.
Yeah. HCM, it's HCM-impact, one word, so to speak, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Good. I encourage people as well to check this website out and to find out more. And we will be doing these sessions for the next few weeks and encourage you to become involved with the project. So with that, I want to then thank Richard Frost for being our guest today and wish everyone an excellent rest of your day and week. Cheers from Dubai.
Cheers.
Thanks, Richard.
Cheers.